All right. So I've been kind of going through Reddit. I mentioned this in another video, but I've been going through Reddit, just finding different questions and different problems people have. And I decided to I've been answering them on Reddit, but I decided to make a video series where I just kind of find questions and give my 2 cents on them. I'm not saying that it's the best answer in the world, but it's just my 2 cents. And I try to offer some perspectives or just some opinions based on experiences that I've had in my own life. So, first of all, a lot of these Reddit posts are super interesting. Like a lot of them I've seen are like really consistent. It's usually like the same things that people kind of struggle with, which I totally understand. But it's always just interesting to see the mindset people have, or at least I imagine they have as they're writing things out. So I came across one earlier today, and I thought it was interesting, and I wanted to do a video on it. And I'm going to post like a screenshot in the actual video itself. You probably can see it right now. But basically, what it says is, how do I deal with never seeing success in 20 years despite working hard? I'm 22 and I never truly felt lucky despite working hard. I never made any friends despite always reaching out to others. I never got into any good colleges despite studying hard in high school. And I never found a good job. I feel like a failure even though I work so hard. How do I deal with this? I thought this was an interesting post because I thought it was interesting for a few reasons. One reason is I think most of us know what it feels like to feel like a failure, to feel like you're doing so much work or putting in so much effort and not actually getting any results back from the world, the universe, whatever you want to call it. Second, a part of the reason why I feel this is interesting is because I don't know his life. And I guess this is also part of my initial suggestion to this person if they were to ever see this or if you're dealing with this yourself. Don't you probably have heard something similar to this before. This is probably not the most unique advice. I get the feeling that this person is hyper comparing themselves to people around them. And I do think in some situations, comparison can be a good way to motivate yourself. I think it can be a good way to reach new heights, so to speak. But I also think comparing yourself in a in the wrong way leads to you being unhappy because you're effectively seeing the results of someone without really knowing the effort or the process or how much time it took them to get from point A to point B. Meanwhile, you're putting yourself down without knowing their full story. Hopefully that makes sense. So, and I kind of get that vibe from this post. He says he's 22. First of all, 22 is super young. 22 is really young. Never felt lucky despite working hard. Totally get that. I felt that before. I'm sure many people have felt that. I never made any friends despite always reaching out to others. Now, I feel like this first sentence, I just want to break this apart real quick. Again, I don't know this person. So if I knew him in real life, him or I'm assuming it's a he. I don't know if it says if it's a he or she. I'm assuming it's a he. But if I knew him in real life, I'd question if he has no friends. Because I find it hard to believe that at 22, he's never had any friends ever in his entire life. I feel like the reality is that he probably has friends. Maybe he doesn't value his friends that much, or maybe they're not the best, highest quality friends. And maybe he wants to level up his social circle. Maybe he wants to get better friends that maybe fit what he wants to do in his life. And I guess I'm going to say this for the entire post. I'm going to kind of go through each part one by one, but for the entire post, my personal suggestion, what I would personally recommend if I knew this guy, if I was like his older brother or something, one, you got to create your own luck. I'm a full believer in that. I do think luck is real. I do think that you can, to a degree, get lucky. Like things can just be bestowed upon you that give you good opportunities or that make life easier. That can happen. But I do think that a big part of what we consider luck is you as an individual just doing things consistently until you open your eyes to an opportunity. And I'm going to deviate a little bit and give a quick story about this. I had a buddy years ago, it was a roommate of mine, and he would always say that he's super lucky. Whenever we go out, whenever something good happened to him, he's like, man, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky. Like his belief in himself, his identity was that he's lucky. And I said to him one time, because he took this trip somewhere and his car like broke down. And he's like, man, he's like, my car broke down, but I'm so lucky because there just happened to be a gas station nearby. And luckily this gas station was there and I can pull into it. And they luckily had like a shop where they can fix my car real quick and I can get back on the road. And he used to go like on vacation or something. And I said to him, I was like, don't misinterpret what I'm going to say to you. I don't mean this in a negative way. I'm just saying this because I find it fascinating the way you speak about yourself, the language you use for yourself. And I told him, I was like, in hindsight, maybe I should have said this because maybe it could be like a ball buster. I was just trying to be like, I don't know. I was just pointing it out because I thought it was interesting. I said to him, it's funny that you perceive yourself as lucky because the perception of yourself as lucky is what creates the luck. In reality, the things you perceive as lucky is not even all that improbable. It's just stuff that you notice and you attribute it to luck when it's not luck. It's just your efforts manifesting themselves, or it's just you being more attentive to the things around you. And he's like, what do you mean by that? And I was like, well, I was like, you're driving your car and you said your car broke down. Okay, that happens to people. Cars break down. That's not abnormal. You said it was lucky that there was a gas station nearby. And I told him, I was like, you don't live in an area where there aren't gas stations. So it's not luck, it's just probability. There's gas stations everywhere. It's not lucky. It's probability. That's all it is. I told him, I was like, if you were in the middle of the desert, maybe, and you hadn't seen a gas station for like 4 hours straight, and then your car broke down, and coincidentally, the moment it broke down, there's happened to be a gas station right across the street, that'd be lucky because it's so improbable that you stumbling upon that result, despite its improbability, would be crazy to think about. That's luck. That's like true luck. Just like something being super improbable, despite you not making anything happen to get a certain result. Hopefully that makes sense. I was like, what you experience is not really luck because there's gas stations everywhere. And a lot of gas stations have like auto shops or someone who can fix like basic repairs. Not all of them, but many of them do. It's not that uncommon. And so he was like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I get the point. And so I say this because this guy is saying, I never truly felt lucky despite working hard. And I think what I would personally recommend, like I said, you got to make your own luck, and you got to start once you start. Part of I think making your own luck is really just being more perceptive to opportunities that could present themselves, like really being on the lookout for opportunities, listening more attentively to the world around you to see if something could benefit you. I think that's creating your own luck. I say this too. Recently I've been putting out like a lot more content, trying to put out more content. And I had an email, and the email was from this company called Prozis, and they reached out and they said, hey, we want to do like a brand like partnership with you. We'll send you products like every month, whatever, and you just make like videos and you post on your feed on Instagram and your stories on Instagram, and we'll give you products and you get commission from them. You don't have to like buy anything from us. All the products are free. You just post them and we'll give you more. And I was like, that's kind of cool. But I think I thought part of me would say like that's lucky. Part of me also thinks that I was just on the lookout for things to happen like that. Me several years ago may have saw that exact same email and may have thought it was like a scam, or I may have thought that it was just someone messing around with me, or I might have just not even checked my email and completely like ignored it until it eventually just got buried in all of my inbox messages and I would have missed it. And so that's what I mean when I say like you have to create your own luck. You have to be on the lookout for opportunities that could be presenting themselves. You have to kind of reconfigure your mind in a sense to always be searching for opportunities or for positives when they present themselves and make those things that do pop up favorable for you. Um, Little side thing, I do this all the time. I always like to perceive, even like when things are negative, I like to perceive them as a positive. Like I used to do this a lot when I used to like actively date and go like try to go on dates with girls. I'm sure if you're a dude watching this, you totally understand this. Inevitably, you'll meet girls that flake. The girls are just super flaky. That's how girls are. Actually, there's another Reddit post where someone talks about flaking. So I'll talk about that more in that post, or in a video covering that Reddit post. But if you're a dude, you understand that girls flake like all the time, especially when it comes to like dating and stuff like that. And when I first was trying to like date and girls would flake, it would piss me off. I'd get so mad about it because I'm like, man, she just like, I fucking took time out of my day to come here, get coffee or go to get dinner or whatever. And she just didn't even show up. She didn't even like send a message, or like afterwards, she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Something came up. She'll make up some excuse that something came up. And I used to hate it. And eventually I reframed in my head that perspective, like that situation. And instead of me getting mad at her for not showing up, I switched and said, girls just flake. So expect the flake. And since I'm expecting the flake, I can simply just do something else while she flakes. So if we're getting coffee, for example, and she flakes or she's late, I already have work prepared. I have things that I'm planning on doing, even if she doesn't show up. Like if she does show up, that's cool. If she doesn't show up, that's fine too. I got stuff to do. It works out. So this is kind of what I mean when I say you have to kind of reframe the way you view things. Like you say that you reach out to people and they don't respond, so you can't make friends. I would say you're just one step closer to finding a good person who would reach out, who's a positive friend, who's actually a great friend. Because the people that aren't reaching out probably aren't that interesting, or they're at least not interested in what you're interested in, which means they're probably not a good fit for you. They're probably not good friends for you. You have to reframe it in your head so that way it's not a negative, it's a positive. Second thing, I never got into any good colleges despite studying hard in high school. Now, there's a lot about this sentence I can go into. One, I can go into how not going to college might not even be a negative thing. It could be a positive thing. You could say that you might, I mean, I don't know what college, if he did get into a college or if he just, I don't know what this whole college situation is. I would say if he didn't get into any colleges, no student loan debt. I know tons of dudes, people in general, who didn't go to college, who turned out super well. You don't need to go to college to be successful. That's a myth. Let's not believe this. So that's not a negative thing. Again, going back into, you have to just kind of reconfigure your perspective. Some things you perceive as being bad luck might actually be a blessing. It might actually be good luck. You're just not seeing the positives in it. You're seeing the negatives. Second thing, studying hard in high school. Easy and hard are subjective, in my personal opinion. I think that some people think that certain things are easy, and for other people, that same activity might be hard. And I certainly believe that there are some activities that people perceive as being hard, and it's actually for other people quite easy. Now, I'll give you an example. I had some friends that are engineers, and they would work for 12 hours a day, but they'd work for 12 hours a day, 4 days a week. And sometimes I'll say, like, what do you even do when you work? Like, what is your work composed of? And they would say, oh, well, the work is pretty much like you're just sitting there at this computer. Sometimes I watch movies, sometimes I just chill, but I'm usually like watching these computer screens. And maybe they're just like oversimplifying what it is. And sometimes we'd have conversations and they would say, like, well, they would say, like, my work schedule is hard because I work 12 hours a day. It's like, well, that's subjective because based on what you told me, you just said that you kind of sit at a screen and just watch whatever's happening. And you can watch movies in the background and stuff. That's not hard, in my personal opinion. And I say this because for me, an average day, and this is how it's been since college, for me, an average day would be waking up at like 5 or 6 a.m. Back in college, I would walk to the gym. Usually took me about 35 minutes to walk to the gym, 35 minutes, 45 minutes, depending on like how I felt, how cold it is, all that stuff. But it would take over half an hour to walk to the gym. I'd work out in the morning, usually fasted, walk back. I didn't have a car. I'd walk back home, shower, change, do my morning routine. And then depending on the day, I'd either have work. I used to work at a gas station and a bar mostly. And I eventually started working as a manager at this Halloween City. But for a long period of time, I'd come home, I'd walk, I'd shower, do my morning routine, walk to the gas station, which was not close. It was about 35-40 minutes. It was literally closer to the gym. It was actually kind of like right behind the gym. So I would literally like come back and forth. I could have showered at the gym. I don't know why back then I didn't do that. But I actually don't even know if the gym had showers, to be honest. I don't think I ever checked and tried to see that. That would have been more efficient. Regardless, I'd walk back to the gas station, usually work there for about 8 hours, maybe 10 hours if I could pick up a shift from somebody else. I'd come back and either nap or I'd have class. It kind of just depended. But to kind of make things simple, I'd be up from about 5 a.m. until about 11 p.m. working the entire day, just fatiguing the brain. Because I think there's different types of work. There's some work that's physically intense, like construction. There's some work that's mentally intense, like if you're trying to start a business and you have to like think about everything on your own and it's stressful and you have to like really plan things out. That's mentally difficult. And there's some things that are neither. Like if you just had to, say, for example, watch a cat, and that's your job. I don't think that's physically demanding. You're not picking up anything. You're not doing any manual labor, nor is it intellectually or cognitively stressful. You don't have to think about much. You just have to watch the cat, make sure the cat doesn't break stuff. Very simple, easy. Child could do it. So I say this because that was an average day for me. And I think for a lot of people, if they were to try to replicate that, and I've had some friends that tried to like do part of that day, just wake up early by the like not even like the whole walking to the gym. They would just try to wake up early and they couldn't even do that. For them, it was hard. For me, it's average. It's just normal day. And I still kind of do a similar routine to this day. As I'm doing this video right now, it's 9 p.m. I've been up since 5:15. So average. This is all average for me. This is no longer like a struggle. It's not hard. It's normal. And I've seen people who work harder than me. I've seen people who I went to like a seminar years ago. It was like a little like seminar in California. And the dude was speaking literally, and I find speaking to be pretty stressful. Actually, I've not stressful in a bad way. I just feel like if you talk too much, it's cognitively challenging. I'll put it that way. So it's hard to do for a long period of time until you like train yourself to do it. And this dude did a conference. It was a whole weekend, and he spoke like all day, every day for the entire conference. He'd do a conference early in the morning. He'd plan things out. I saw him behind the scenes planning things out, making sure everything's taken care of. He'd be talking to people in the hallways. People would stop him. He would like answer their questions, whatever. Then that night, he would be doing like content. He'd do like a podcast with people. Then that morning, he would do like a morning class at like 6 a.m., 7 a.m., do like a mini talk to those people that showed up for the class. Then he'd do his presentation. Then he's back to structuring and organizing things, answering people's questions in the hallways when they see him, trying to sell stuff on the side, doing another podcast that day. He did this the entire weekend. And I was like, after one day, I'd be burnt out. Because to me, that's like mentally fatiguing. That's hard to do. Not for him. For him, it's probably average. It's probably a normal thing for him. So when he says he didn't get into any good colleges despite studying hard in high school, what's hard? Did he actually study hard? Maybe for him it was hard. Maybe for most people they would say you barely studied at all. You barely did the bare minimum. So that's subjective. I think if he were to see this, he should really sit there and be honest with himself and redefine what hard is and if he could have done more. Because I did that too when I was in high school. I would say like, oh man, I'm studying so hard. I didn't study that hard. I'll be honest. I didn't study that hard. And at the time I thought I was studying hard. And I was just mainly because I was lazy. I was kind of just lazy. I didn't really care about the topics. But once I pushed myself a little bit, you kind of reach a new level. And then in hindsight, you're like, oh, that wasn't me working hard at all. That was me kind of going soft. It's almost like if you've ever, I don't know if you've experienced this. I've experienced this a few times. I'll use a specific example. Math. When I was in high school, math seemed like the most complicated subject ever, like super complicated. I hated math. And then when I got to college, I would look at like college and beyond, even as like an adult after I graduated, I would look at like the math I was doing in high school and even the math I was doing in college. And I would sit there and say, like, oh, this is easy. How did I think this was difficult? This was so simple. Like all I had to do was like follow the instructions, use the formula that they gave me, and I would have gotten the answer like pretty much every time. How did I mess this up? It's like a weird like hindsight thing. Like you see it in hindsight, you're like, oh, it's so simple, it's so easy. Well, if it was so easy, how come you didn't do it back in the day? How come you didn't do it initially? I think he's probably in that same situation where maybe in a few years he'd look back and if you were really being honest with himself, he would sit there and say, was I actually studying that hard? Not really. That's why I didn't get into a good college because I didn't study that hard. Or maybe he did study hard. Maybe he just didn't apply correctly. Maybe he didn't do some other stuff that was required of him when he was applying. I don't know. It's tough to say because there's not much context to this excerpt or this little post that he made. Never found a good job. I can't say much on the never finding a good job because again, good jobs are subjective. There are some jobs that don't pay much but are very fulfilling. People might find that to be a good job. There's some jobs that pay a lot that aren't very fulfilling. People might also consider that to be a good job. And the reverse is true. You can have a good job that's not very fulfilling. People might say it's a terrible job because it doesn't pay enough. Or just because it's not fulfilling, I meant. Or you might have a job that doesn't pay much and is super fulfilling, but people might say that's a bad job just because it doesn't pay very much. It's subjective. For that, I would just say flip the perspective. That's it. Like figure out the benefits of the job you do have compared to thinking like kind of instead of comparing yourself to jobs you want to have but maybe couldn't get. That's the way I see it at least. and again, I think there's always this like grass is greener mentality. I think as humans, you kind of always have that. You always think like, what's on the other side? Is there something better waiting for me? Is there more? I'm not saying don't be optimistic. I think it's good to be optimistic, but I am saying that to a degree, you have to kind of take into consideration that your imagination will make things seem greater than they truly are. I 1000% think that's the case. You are driving like some beat up Honda Civic and you think that getting that brand new sports car is going to make your life better. It will not. It's not going to feel that much better. You'll adapt to it. And then once you get that new sports car, you'll be wondering what the next best sports car will feel like. I know this because I've done it. I've been in that situation. So I am in that situation. So I know for sure what that's like. It's the same thing with everything. I see a lot of dudes. I know I'm going on like a slight tangent, but I see this with like dudes too. They have like girlfriends, or maybe they're single, but they want to get a girlfriend. But they see some chick on like Instagram. They think, well, maybe I can get that kind of girl. Maybe I can get a hotter girl or a funnier girl or more, a girl that's more in line with my ideals or like sports like I do, whatever. And it's like you at some point you have to be realistic and understand that there are infinite possibilities. There are infinite girls to pick from. There are infinite jobs you can get. There are infinite cars you can drive. There are infinite houses you can live in. There is no such thing as the best. You have to just be realistic and say, what's good enough for me? What checks the boxes? What fulfills the purpose? That's the way I like to look at it. Because he's saying, like, I never had a good job. Well, I don't know. Maybe you do maybe you have a fantastic job. Maybe there's some dude overseas in some war-torn country that sees the job that you have, might think it's a fantastic job. Meanwhile, you think it's a terrible job. Who knows? Or maybe you don't have a job at all. You might think that's a bad thing. I don't have a job at all. I live at home with my parents. Okay, cool. That's not a bad thing. You live at home with your parents. And maybe you can start your own job. And maybe in a few years, like a year or two, you might exceed the people. You might surpass the people that got the job that you wanted because your own job is thriving so much. It's all perspective, in my personal opinion. So that's kind of my take on this topic. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that makes sense. If it does, please like the video, please comment, and please, I'm begging you, please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers in the next like month or two. So if you made it this far, please hit the subscribe button. I'd appreciate it a lot. But on a serious note, hopefully this whole video helped. I know it's a bit long, but I wanted to kind of give my 2 cents to the best of my ability. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Peace out. Bye.